Welcome to Candid Conversations for Financial Markets podcast series. I'm your host, Laura Paglia, President and CEO. Our podcasts are designed to provide insights, transparency, and provocative yet achievable proposals for matters that move financial markets in Canada. Today, we're discussing data portability with the Competition Bureau of Canada, drawing on the findings of the Competition Bureau's report, Your Data, Your Control. We are delighted to have with us Azza Raslan, Acting Manager in Policy, Planning, and Advocacy Directorate at the Competition Bureau. Before joining the Bureau, Azza built extensive experience in competition policy across government, international organizations, and the private sector. Azza is also a Senior Research Fellow at the University College London Centre for Law, Economics, and Society, focusing on the intersection of competition law and economic development. Welcome, Azza.
Thank you, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very excited and looking forward to our conversation.
As are we. So let's start off by, could you please define for us data portability from the Competition Bureau's perspective?
Of course, gladly. So you can think of data portability in these terms. Data portability is, in essence, is a feature that users can utilize, can basically use to be able to take their personal information and securely uh, move it or transfer it to another platform or service provider as they wish. So I'll give you, like, for example, think of your banking data, think of your insurance history, think of your photo albums. If you're like me and have thousands of photos, you know that sometimes you need to move around and it's very difficult. Or if you have like playlists, or if you're a gamer, or even if you're a business that have like business records, on the cloud and you want to change cloud services. So these are just some of the examples that data portability can help with. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. And so, with that in mind, earlier this year, the Bureau published its report, Your Data, Your Control. Why was that report published?
Okay. So one of the main motivators for us to work on data portability, in particular this report, is because we realize that most Canadians are not familiar with data portability, and we get it. It sounds like this complicated, like legal or technical term that has nothing to do with your everyday life. But you know, as based on some of the examples I mentioned, you come to realize that no, it might be actually something that either I actually want or I've used before, but I didn't realize that this is data portability. So we wanted to look at data portability and inform both Canadians and policymakers and regulators about the potential value that it has, whether for competition, for consumers, or for the market players, and for innovation in the market, and of course for the greater economy. What we also wanted to do as well is give this like uh, roadmap or highlight the key factors of for a data portability that is like pro competition and would serve the best interests of all these different stakeholders. And this is sort of why we wanted to produce this report.
So, thank you, Azza. And can you tell us what those key benefits and values are from the consumer perspective and from a pro competitive perspective?
Of course, gladly. So, starting off from, let's start with the consumers because this is a consumer-centric piece of work, meaning we were focusing very much on consumers when we had them in mind when we were working on that. So, first of all, as I said, it would give consumers this right or this ability to move around their personal information between platforms or service providers, and that basically gives them more choice, more freedom to look around, shop around, and switch and choose the provider that serves their best interest. So that is like very important benefit for consumers, and by their benefits is not just I don't mean just like in terms of savings, like on costs or like whether in terms of money or time, but I also mean other would we say like non-price matters, things like the quality or the terms of use. So that's from like the consumer's perspective. Now, if you look at, for example, like companies or new firms that want to enter into that, market or sector and provide the same services or complementary services, um, and given how data is now an essential component to many sectors, from retail, transport to like financial sectors, like it is everywhere now, more or less. Um, Data portability sort of like lowers that entry barrier. That's what we call in competition. It's an entry barrier, and it allows them to get some access to this data for them to, build these apps and offer these new services, hopefully with better terms, to gain, more customers or new customers. Um, and when that happens, usually that means that we also notice that there is like a space for innovation in those markets and sectors. Even things that you haven't thought about are popping up. Like looking at the financial markets, you could think of, with open banking, there weren't just new firms that provide same or similar like banking services, but others that provide, for example, budgeting, apps for users, so things that weren't possible before are now possible because the data can move more freely. And when you look at the big picture, like if all these different parties are benefiting, whether with more consumer choice, lowering switching costs, or even the threat of switching, that motivates companies to compete. So you have better competitive dynamics or better competitive reality in a market, and then that would allow new firms to enter and to innovate, which would hopefully have a positive spillover across the economy.
Mm. The report refers to a concept called multi-homing. What does that refer to?
Yes. So thank you for that. So in the beginning, when I was saying that this would enable users to take their data or share it with more than one provider, this is sort of what I was getting at. So I'll give you an example. Today, when I was getting to the office, I felt it was a bit late, so I checked my ride app that I have on my phone, and I have more than one. And then I checked which one had the better offer, and I went with that. So this is an example of multi-homing. Multi-homing is basically the ability to use your data across a number of service providers, and it could be the exact same service, but then it opens or unlocks better choices and opportunities for you to choose the service provider that works best for you. So
Okay.
that is what multi-homing is.
So thank you, Azza. That was a helpful summary. In the in the media, we hear most about how data portability is a positive, leading to more competition. That brings multiple benefits, as you've outlined. The Competition Bureau has gone farther in its report and has also set out other impacts of datability on competition, including where the challenges can lie. So, can you set some of those out for us?
Sure. So let me mainly just like take one step back and just maybe I'm not sure how familiar our listeners are with our like the competition bureau and our mandate, and I think that would help give context on how we approach this subject. Uh, we are the Competition Bureau. We are a law enforcement agency. Our main aim is to protect and promote competition for Canadians and like Canadian businesses as well. And to do that, we like use different tools. One of which is what we call advocacy. Advocacy is like you're championing something, right? Like and for us, we basically champion or we advocate for competition to all levels of government. Data portability and like access to data has been a subject that we've worked on quite often, advocating for data portability, whether for within the open banking or now our consumer-driven banking framework, or with the digital health data, and so on and so forth. So it's not something new that we've been working on. But I also want to talk just a little bit about how we go about like doing our work. We are very much it's very important for us to to be fact based and to you know when we pick a subject or we talk about a subject, it is important for us to bring the what we think are the most important factors from, especially from a competition perspective. And that for this particular report, that was no different. So this report is a bit unique in the sense that it is not what you would see usually from the bureau, like market studies, for example, where we look at a particular market or sector and we try to identify the competition issues there. This was more about looking at data portability and how it like the type of like value it could bring to Canadians into our markets, and to understand what are the key factors to have a well-designed data portability framework for Canadians. So now turning to the challenges, this is exactly why we sort of also did not just cover what are the potential benefits of data portability, but we wanted to have a holistic discussion to also try to understand if data portability comes with challenges, what they were, to be best prepared, like to be uh, ready to deal with them so that we would reap the benefits of having data portability. So some of these challenges, for example, we talk about how it could have a potential like positive effect on competition because it lowers, for example, switching barriers. But we also know from literature on the subject that sometimes the effect could be that maybe the already existing big firms, what we call incumbents, might actually have the ability, because they're already there and established, to actually have more data rather than less. So that is something that we need to take into consideration. Others, things like its effect on small and medium like businesses. So, for example, privacy and security is very important, and you need to have the right safeguards for that. But you need also to be aware that the compliance costs are not so prohibitive for them to enter into that market and compete, because then it would defy the purpose of what you're trying to do. So this is all like these couple of examples just to emphasize that it does come with challenges, but um, the way to deal with this is to have this balanced approach and to put that into application through having a well designed data portability that can take all these factors into consideration as part of the design.
Well, thank you, Azza. And we need adoption.
Ah.
And the report sets out the behaviors that you see in Canadians. Um, what challenges or what would need to change regarding Canadian behaviors?
Um, okay, so when we started working on this report, we definitely wanted to understand how Canadians are thinking, or how they would think about data portability, and what sort of like would influence their decisions. So, uh, like if just to focus on that like question about what are the behavioral barriers. Uh, Behavioral barriers are basically it could be like this perception, or it's like this feeling or this behavior that stops a person from taking a different course of action. It doesn't necessarily come from a lot of contemplation or deep thinking, but it's just sort of like, let's say, um, your default. You usually go for that decision based on a certain perception you have. Um, when we were looking at data portability, we wanted to understand how Canadians would react to it, and to do that, we looked at uh, how new technology was received, and what are the some of the behavioral barriers that could face them, because data portability basically it will bring in like this form of like new ways to do things, and so on and so forth. So when we looked at that, we found what we call like certain types of biases. So, for example, one form of bias is what we call familiarity bias. And this is where you sort of like go to a certain or use certain service provider or a certain product because you're familiar with that product more than any other thing, and you're staying with them. Uh, the other form of bias that you can see is the status quo bias, and this is sort of like you might know that there are other options out there, and they might even be better, but you just do not want to change anything. You want to stay with what you know. The other also behavioral bias that could be in play here is what you call consumer inertia, and this is about like consumers are like sticking to what they know. This is like the stickiness there, and they're not sure even if they consider something else will be beneficial for them. So you can see a scenario where a data portability enabled service is out there, but either consumers are not familiar with it, so they feel more loyal to whatever they're using or the brand they're buying right now. So they are not really into switching, or they don't know like how to switch, or they don't know that there's any benefit or value for them to switch, or they just think it's just going to be too burdensome. It's just going to take a lot of trouble for me to switch the service provider. So these are some of the behavioral barriers that we notice, and we hope with this study like you know shedding some light on such barriers. We hope that um, they would be addressed while we're designing our own frameworks, and that consumers would be more encouraged to go out there and try data portability and try switching, and making the best of what data portability has to offer.
Well, thank you, Ella. Did the work reveal anything surprising in that regard regarding the attitudes or the awareness of data portability?
Okay, so we really wanted to hear what Canadians are thinking about data portability is, and maybe I'll share some of the things that we've learned. So I'd say the first one is maybe no surprise. Canadians are not most Canadians are not very informed about data portability, meaning they don't understand what it is and how it works. Um, and that matters because the more, based on our research, the more you understand data portability, the more probable you are to, you know, uh, adopt it. To be more precise, 36% more likely to adopt it. And also, if you feel that it's like a risky, practice, you are less likely, and it's like around 60% less likely to adopt it. So, um, that was the first thing that we noticed. The second thing that we noticed is that Canadians are, in general, concerned about their privacy. So this was not a question about data portability; it was a more general one. And we found that two-thirds of our respondents were concerned about it, and with 40% very concerned. Uh, so that uh, indicates that this is a you know a very strong concern that needs to be addressed for them to use data portability and unlock all these benefits that data portability can bring them. There is, however, some like good news, which is we also were able to identify some of the factors that could drive adoption of data portability, and these were about like clear and like meaningful savings in terms of time and money. So if they are offered a data portability enabled service that would bring them clear benefits in terms of time and money, that should positively impact their decision to use data portability. Finally, maybe we also like what would be also in relevant to mention is that we also asked about their switching behavior, and we found that though uh, more like Canadians are interested in switching, less are doing so, which means that maybe there is some work to be done there to sort of convince them to try out, comparing different service providers or products, and doing the switch when they feel that it is in their best interest.
Okay. Well, data portability regimes are forming around the globe, and some faster than others. The Competition Bureau notes that the UK open banking system is the most mature data portability system in the world right now. Um, why and what takeaways can Canada take from that?
Um, so when we were doing this study, what we wanted also to include is, learning from any um, international experiences out there that started this process before us. And of course, the UK experience stands out because it's arguably the most mature, like open banking application right now. And there were very interesting observations. So the first one is about some of the benefits that they have reported. So the last the last review of the open banking completion report basically notes that they have seen an increase in usership. Usership means these are the the people that are using data portability enabled services, like through different apps. Um, and I think they stood last count at 12 million users with about 300 companies, firms registered to provide these services with an estimated revenue for the economy of about 4 billion British pounds. Uh, the benefits don't stop here, and maybe the next one is we find even more interesting, which is that having open banking seemed to have disrupted the market. And by that, I mean it enabled the entry of new players, whether to provide complementary services or, new innovative services in a way that shook up, the status quo that was in that market. So think, for example, third-party payment, apps. Now it is another like a function that can be done with more service providers than before. Um, the other thing that is interesting also to note with the UK beyond open banking is that um with them and other countries that they maybe came before us with data portability, they are looking into now scaling data portability across the economy. So I'll just mention one last thing. With the UK, they recently adopted their Data Use and Access Act, in I believe in 2025, and this is an act whereby they want to put a framework to have data portability applied across the economy. And based on their studies, they think that within 10 years they can add about 10 billion British pounds to the economy just by doing that. So these are some of the things that we noticed there, and we hope that it gives a positive indication for us, and that we could replicate, similar positive effects for Canada.
Thank you, Azza. The Competition Bureau has done um, multiple work in this area. For the financial sector in 2019, um, it made a submission to Finance Canada on open banking, a submission to the Advisory Committee on Open Banking in 2021, and again in 2024. There was a consultation on strengthening competition in the financial sector. And most recently, the Competition Bureau co created the Canadian Digital Regulators Forum, which focuses on information sharing and collaboration on digital market issues such as data portability. What are the competition's next steps to bring data portability to reality in Canada?
Okay, so maybe I would start by just saying that the main aim for us was to inform Canadians and policymakers and regulators about the benefits of data portability, and also to contribute to that by trying to put forward like a roadmap of establishing our own effective data portability regime here in Canada. Um, we do hope that these recommendations are considered and hopefully to see them put into action. And on that point, I just want to say that because we are in a way we because of our the type of organization we are and our mandate, we are not in the driver's seat, so to speak, uh, for the implementation part, but we are definitely here to support and help in any way we can with policymakers or regulators that are interested in implementing data portability. And we already do that. For example, you mentioned our work with the digital uh, data. Uh, we for example we were just testifying to the parliament on a newly introduced a bill in that space to make the movement of health data more like easier, which is something we've championed before. So this is also an example of sort of how we can help with those next steps.
Thank you very much, Azza. It has been a pleasure speaking with you this afternoon.
Same here, Laura. It's a pleasure to speak to you, and I hope our listeners enjoyed the talk about data portability.
I'm sure they will. Thank you.